On a warm Indian summer evening, on the porch of their Indianapolis home, the Whites share a family meal. A passerby might mistake them for a typical Midwestern family, unless, of course, they'd read this book, detailing the Whites' personal history of alien abduction.
There was more evidence supporting this abduction than any so far investigated in the history of the science of the comparative study of abduction, the abduction phenomenon. But this is the first case that let us understand the alien's purpose.
The family's incredible story first came to Bud Hopkins' attention in 1983. The Whites' middle daughter, Debbie, wrote Hopkins a letter explaining her fear and frustration, and included these photographs of strange burn marks which were appearing in the Whites' backyard.
The grass looked like it had been compacted. There was no grass alive on it. That in itself really ticked me off because I thought my yard was nice. It was one day nice, next day no. And there it is, and it stayed like it for almost 5 years.
Hopkins had received many letters from self-proclaimed abductees, but none had the wealth of experience and the mysterious physical evidence present in the White case.
This is what happened to that nice, rich, loamy, black-brown soil that the backyard in Indiana had. It was turned sort of gray and hard as a rock. So we don't know what it is that caused this effect, but it has turned up in numerous other UFO landing cases in other parts of the world. When I got out there, and what I learned through a few phone calls, the neighbors had witnessed certain manifestations that very night. There was this tremendous noise coming from Debbie's yard, and this huge flash of light coming through the trees, and all the electricity went out. So we had a lot of people who could say, no, this is not something that went on in some young woman's head. This is something that went on outside the house, in the backyard.
During that UFO encounter, Debbie had a period of missing time she could not account for. But under hypnosis, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place.
We proceeded to do a hypnotic regression. And the story began to slowly unfold of what had happened in the period of time she couldn't recall.
Things started coming out of me. Memories started coming back from all over the place. It was like it's a floodgate opened up.
During that session, Debbie recalled the terrifying events that preceded the mysterious burn marks on the lawn.
Night that changed my life forever. I happened to see a really strange light coming out of the pump house that's next to the swimming pool out back. I was thinking of prowlers, you know. And by the time I got back there in just maybe 5 minutes, it was gone.
When the lights disappeared, Debbie asked her mother to babysit while Debbie went over to a girlfriend's house. Later that night, from the doorway, Debbie's mother began to see the lights as well.
As I looked out the window on the bird feeder, I seen a light that was about the size of a basketball. And I got on the phone and I called Debbie because I was here with the two little ones by myself.
So I hung up the phone. I said, I got to go home. There's something going on.
She come in the back door and she said, where's Dad's shotgun? And Debbie picked up the gun, went out in the back, and I watched her out the back door, and she came to the pump house and she opened the door.
I don't remember seeing a darn thing. Found my dog hiding under my dad's truck out back and tried with all my might to get her out from under the truck, and she would not come. She was screaming and squealing, and I grabbed her paws and tried to drag her, and she wouldn't come.
When Debbie walked back toward the house, she saw a ball of light inside the garage. Her mother was standing, frozen, at the screen door.
Sometimes when a person is being abducted, the other people are switched off, as we call it. They're sort of in a state of suspended animation.
All of a sudden, I feel like my whole body is on fire. Every inch of my skin is burning. And I realized I couldn't move. And I also could hardly see. It was like I'd been attacked by a mob of tourists with cameras flashing me in the eyes. Then I could see this movement in the yard in front of me, and there were 6 small people. I could see these big black eyes. Ooh, and I got the shivers, you know. And I'm thinking, no, this can't be. Then I can move again. It's like I blinked and all this stuff was gone. Later, we figured out I was gone in like an hour and a half, and I only remember like 10 minutes.
For months after the incident, Debbie suffered from fatigue, headache, and flu-like symptoms. The family dog died soon after the encounter from what the vet described as an illness resembling radiation poisoning. When Bud Hopkins met the family later, he administered psychological and physical tests and determined that the Whites were of sound mind and body. He then began his 3-year study of their abduction experiences.
It would seem that the mother had had childhood abduction experiences, and that Debbie's sister had also had experiences as a child. This is what the hypnotic sessions revealed. Of course, her mother having this very deep scoop mark on the front of her leg, more or less in exactly the same place that Debbie's is. So there was a lot of reason to believe that the family was associated with an abduction.
Debbie's older sister, Kathie, recalled an extraordinary UFO encounter she had as a teenager in 1965.
My mom had me take her to a church function. It was approximately 4:30. I was driving home, and the next thing I remembered consciously, I was not on the road. I was sitting behind a church, looking up at the sky at this huge UFO that was over my car. And then just instantly, it just went so fast, in a blink of an eye, it was gone. It was dark. It was just pitch black outside. And it was time for me to go back and get my mom, which would have made it approximately 11:30. So from sometime between 5 and 11:30, what seemed to be just a couple of minutes to me, that much time had lapsed.
Under hypnosis, Kathie was able to fill in that missing time in horrifying and graphic detail.
I remember being on a table. The entity I remember is very, very tall. The face was exactly like a praying mantis, and it moved its head in very jerky-like manner. And I'm pretty sure, just in my own heart, that that's not the first time in 1965.
I think it was very upsetting to her what she was re-experiencing under hypnosis, and decided that was it, no more.
But Debbie continued to probe her abduction experiences, recalling events from childhood, and soon a pattern of experience developed that she believes explains why she was forced to endure painful and humiliating experimentation. Bud Hopkins' 3-year investigation concluded that the White family of Indianapolis had had a 30-year relationship with extraterrestrial forces, Hopkins dubbed the Intruders. And when daughter Debbie was hypnotized and regressed back to earlier alien encounters, she revealed the sinister purpose behind the family's chain of abduction experience. What you are about to hear are the actual tapes from her hypnotherapy sessions.
Something's not right.
Okay, Debbie. What's happening? Tell me what's happening.
Like I was being squashed.
Squashed? Whole body?
My stomach.
Your stomach. Mm-hmm.
I felt as if somebody had taken my insides and just ripped me open inside, and I could feel something pulling out of me, and this little tiny thing that looked like a mouse with no skin on it, like a baby mouse, squirming around in their hand. No, it was not right.
That is a woman crying out in pain, emotional pain, that her child is being taken from her. When this came up with Debbie, and she finally said to me that she had been pregnant and that the baby had disappeared, I realized that this was pretty important in this case. This is the first case that let us understand the sexual reproductive purpose. And now we see it as central, as absolutely the focus of the whole thing.
It was the first case, but not the last. Hopkins received correspondence from hundreds of other abductees who all told the same story. And Hopkins came to believe that the reason for the abductions was to create hybrids, half human, half alien beings.
I remember being in this place. There were several of these gray things in this room, and holding their hands was a very small little person who didn't look like them. She had tufts of white cottony hair sticking out of her head all over, really large eyes, but human, blue. When I thought, oh, I'd love to hug you. And she got this panic look on her face. Her eyes got huge, and she darted behind one of them, like she was scared to death of me. And I felt real sad. I asked if I could take her home with me. And he told me no, she could survive with me. I assumed they were telling me that I was this child's mother.
In 1993, Debbie had a hysterectomy, and immediately after the operation, her abduction experiences ended abruptly. But her two children, now grown, continue to have experiences of their own, and Debbie's new husband, Dave, recently discovered a new scoop mark on his shin.
That was another very important discovery that I made in that case, which of course accompanies this idea of some kind of genetic experimentation, because you're going to be doing that sort of thing across generations. The theories about why a hybrid race is being created are all over the map, but they tend to run to the idea that the aliens have reached some kind of evolutionary dead end and need to revivify their own species.
Debbie and her sister Kathie recently collaborated on a book detailing their very personal encounters. For both of them, choosing to make their experiences public was a difficult decision.
I just felt like it's time. Maybe it's just time to just do this and get it out in the open. And so right at the very last minute, the publisher called me and wanted to know if I would use my real name. I said, well, sure. I have to use my real face. Might as well use my real name.
Coming forward and revealing their true identities has not been without a price. Although the White family is committed to the reality of alien abduction, not everyone sees their revelations as sincere. Theirs is an incredible tale beyond scientific proof.
I don't expect people to believe any of the stuff that me or any of my family members tell them. Believe me, if I hadn't seen some of this stuff with my own eyes, there's no way I would have believed any of it, you know? All we know is something weird is going on, and it's happening to a lot of people, and people should stop and think twice about it. It could happen to you.
It all began with this photograph. After the publication of his first book on UFO research called Missing, Bud received this picture from Kathie Davis of Indianapolis. Kathie claimed that the circle and strip of dead grass had appeared in her yard after she had seen a UFO in the area, and she wondered if the damage had been caused by a UFO taking off and landing. Oddly, she also mentioned that both she and her mother had similar scars, and neither of them could remember the causes. Her curiosity opened a floodgate of revelations. Under hypnosis, Kathie recalled not just the terrifying events of the night she mentioned, which culminated with her abduction, but several other close encounters that had occurred throughout her life. At the age of 7, she had apparently become an unwilling participant in a long-term genetic experiment. Kathie remembered none of this consciously. Hypnosis revealed that a sample of flesh had been removed from her leg during that first abduction by an alien creature she described as having a large head with huge black eyes. Now, if Kathie were the only person describing these encounters, one would be inclined, as she did herself, to doubt her sanity. But these drawings have been done by dozens of different people from various locations claiming similar experiences. Now, over the course of many hypnotic sessions, the purpose of these abductions became clear. Kathie had an ova removed from her body and was eventually shown a hybrid child, apparently part human, part alien. She was told that she was the mother, but could not keep the child. Obviously, this revelation, whether real or imagined, was devastating to Kathie. She has never publicly told her story before because of the ridicule that it would cause. In fact, Bud used a pseudonym for her in his book. Now she has agreed to talk and to use her real name. Meet Debbie Tomey, the real Kathie Davis. Welcome. I want to tell you something, and I told you this story earlier, and I will say this publicly. I used to fly a helicopter for a living. I used to spend a lot of time about 2,000 feet off the ground. It occurred to me one day that, gee, you know, I'm up here. I've probably got a really good chance of seeing a UFO. And I started to look for them. And I was 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, and I would look through the skies. And suddenly one day I realized, wait a minute, if I see this thing, and I go on the radio, and I tell everybody, they're going to think I'm crazy. And I'm going to have to go through my life trying to defend this. And I don't want that. And I consciously stopped looking. And I have to tell you, Debbie, that I admire your courage, and I've spoken with you, and I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to come out and do what you're doing. And I know this is your first appearance, and you've decided that you're going to use your own name, and you're going to come out, and you're going to deal with this. And you tell me that you made this decision a little while ago when you were at a conference in the U.S. somewhere.
Yes, when I was first asked to be on the conference and talk, I didn't want to do it. And after I thought about it for a while, I just felt like I had to do it. I had to do it because I knew there were a lot of people out there that had experienced things and had had memories of things they didn't understand and felt uncomfortable with them. And I knew that the other people who had talked to me about it and shared their stuff with me helped me to feel better about a lot of things, so I thought I could help somebody else. And then I thought, if what good is it going to do me if I hide behind this name?
Right. And it's basically, you said it's their problem. This is your story. You don't have to believe this. You're not here to sell anything. It's just your story.
That's right.
Now, when we were talking about this, you still, and you've been through a lot, you referred to these as dreams. You still, in your own mind, fight with this experience.
There are some parts of it I don't have any problem with. It's very easy for me to say, yes, I believe that there's got to be some other kind of life somewhere else, and I know what I've seen and what my mother and I saw together. Nobody can tell me I didn't see it. They weren't there, and I know what I saw. If you don't believe me, that's your too problem. Bad. Right. But there are things that I do have problems believing, accepting.
What do you have problems with? The hardest part for you is?
Well, the hardest part for me is when I got pregnant. Because when I got pregnant, I assumed that I got pregnant by the man that I was going to marry. And I still think I did. I don't, it's just a tug of war inside of me. And I was just like any other woman that got pregnant and then lost a baby. It hurt all the same, But the circumstances under which I lost it were unusual, to say the least. And that's why I kept it to myself for 7 years after. My mother knew that I had been pregnant and then wasn't pregnant.
So you're pregnant, you're suddenly not pregnant, and what happened to this child was, at least your dream recall is, that you were abducted and the child was taken from you.
The day that I woke up, and the first thing that came to my mind when I woke up that morning was, I'm not pregnant.
This is after an abduction experience, a dream experience.
Well, yeah. I'm not pregnant. And then I got up and went to the restroom, and there was a little bit of spotting. But I still continued to say I wasn't pregnant. I also felt that I had a baby girl. And
in a subsequent abduction, when you went through one of these dream experiences, you were shown a child. And this child you recognized, but it's part human and it's part not human.
It didn't look real good.
How old would this child have been when you saw her?
About 3 or 4.
Deanie, one thing is that this is, of course, the most difficult thing for Debbie or anybody else to talk about who's been through these experiences. I mean, you can talk easily about other sides of it, but obviously this goes to the heart of one's feelings. But this has happened to a number of other people, and I'm dealing now with dozens of similar cases. Recently, a woman who's married to a doctor who was pregnant and went through 3 months of pregnancy, and there was a heartbeat on the ultrasound of the embryo, the fetus, and so forth. And then one morning, she had a normal period, and there was suddenly no more
fetus.
No fetus. She went in, and they did a D&C and sent everything to pathology, and there was absolutely no fetal tissue. and the doctors simply did not know what to do about this. Now, this happens to be the wife of a doctor, and she's been bereft, although she does not want to accept. She has asked me to tell her that this didn't have anything to do with her other extensive UFO experiences.
As a woman, I understand, Debbie, I mean, women understand. I mean, you're telling the story, I'm thinking of my son or my daughter, and one understands as a woman the tremendous loss that is implied here. But this experience in your family is not only you. Your mom went through this, you went through this, your older sister went through this. You read this man's first book, you write to this man, and I'm putting myself in your position because I know that I would be saying to myself, Deanie, you're crazy. You just got to forget this because there's something gone a little wrong. You don't want to tell anybody because maybe you're just coming apart internally, right? So we'll keep this real quiet?
Yep.
And it was reading his book that gave you that little step forward.
Well, actually, it wasn't reading his book. It was the last episode, or whatever you want to call it, that left a mark in the yard. I had to live with looking at that thing every day. And when I did, every time I did, I'd remember things. A lot of the things that I remember, I didn't need hypnosis to remember. Things that go way back till I was really little.
Okay, your abduction started at what age? Your dreams started at what age of being abducted?
The first time I went to Detroit and I was missing all day and they couldn't find me, I was, I think, like between 6 and 7.
And how many times has this happened to you now up to present time? How many experiences have there been?
6 or 7.
Probably a few more than that, actually.
Okay, now you don't know whether or not this is going to happen to you again. I mean, you sit here now, and you don't know. You have to live with this, that this dream may come back again.
Yep.
This is not a comfortable thing to have to live with, Debbie. I mean, I keep trying to put myself in your shoes, and this would, what do you do for reassurance? How do you keep it together, Debbie? How do you just keep going here?
Well, I'm sitting here. I got all my arms and legs. I'm alive,
And that's okay.
Also, when we put people together with other people in a support group who have been through these experiences, and a person can sit there in a room full of people who all seem normal and happy, relatively speaking, you feel better about yourself, you have less self-doubt, and I think that Debbie's certainly been a wonderful addition to a support group that we have in New York, and I think that's been rich, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I'm lucky because it involved my entire family, half of the neighborhood we lived in. I mean, it wasn't just me.
Oh, okay, yeah. That would help a lot if it was...
It really helps a lot that my family has seen it, all the strange stuff and everything. So.
Just one last quick question, because, as I smile when I think about this. Okay, so Debbie meets this wonderful man, and you married this man subsequently, right? And he doesn't know anything about it.
Sure, he knew everything about it.
Well, but when did you, there was a time at which he didn't know, and you had to say, listen, honey, there's just something I think you ought to know about me.
Well, when I met him...
And I would really like to have seen his face, Debbie.
He already knew me and loved me just for what I was, and knew that I wasn't a liar or a cheat, so when I told him my fears and what things that were happening as we were going together, he just accepted it. He was supportive of me.
This is suburban Indianapolis. Not exactly the kind of place you'd expect an alien spacecraft to land. But researchers believe that one did land, not far from here. And what resulted is one of the most well-documented and incredible UFO cases ever.
It is chronicled in this book, Intruders. It tells the story of an Indianapolis woman, Kathie Davis, who had a bizarre encounter in July of 1983 in the backyard of her parents' home. After her mother saw strange lights out by the bird feeder that night, Kathie went to investigate. She saw nothing, but suddenly felt hot.
Like I was on fire. Like all the skin on my body was burning, tingling. And I could hear my heart beating real hard in my ears, and I had to get out of there.
The next morning, there was a strange sight in her backyard. The grass appeared to have been burnt in a circle-like shape, with other burn tracks extending out from the circle. Soil samples indicated the earth had been virtually baked at incredibly high temperatures. Kathie herself began to lose her hair and experienced bizarre physical symptoms, disturbing dreams, and flashbacks.
It wasn't until Kathie sought professional help for her unexplained physical and emotional problems that she remembered, under hypnosis, what happened that night in the backyard.
I remembered a pulling on my arm like I was being tugged down, and then a real sharp pain in my ear that seemed to go all the way through my head. I thought I heard somebody say, "I'm sorry I hurt you." And I can see off to my left a large dark form. I don't want to look at it. Then I remembered hearing my name be called. I remembered hearing a voice, and again, like that knowing, saying that it was time to go, goodbye. Whatever it was over.
What Kathie described is now believed to have been an encounter with occupants of a UFO that landed in her parents' yard that night. Her experience, which is supported by the landing traces in the backyard and by neighbors who felt shaking, saw lights, and experienced a loss of electricity that night, is similar to the experiences of at least 200 other people that we know of, possibly more that we don't.
Either these things are happening as people think they are, as they report they are, and as we seem to find in regressive hypnosis that they are, or there's something extremely interesting about human people, about their minds, about the human species that we haven't begun to understand.
After further investigation, it was revealed that Kathie had had other strange experiences that could not be accounted for. Kathie underwent hypnosis to unlock the other secrets that were surging into her consciousness. She remembered other encounters, this time with strange beings who seemed to know her and appeared in her bedroom.
Somehow, they were standing by my bed, one behind the other, and they moved and spoke in unison, and they had a black box, small black thing with either a red light on it or in it, with a hole in it, I'm not sure. I was told to hold it and to look at it, and I didn't want to. And I remembered when I first saw them there, I was terrified, and my first thoughts were, if you don't come any closer and don't touch me, I'll be all right.
In an attempt to come to grips with her experience, Kathie fashioned a clay model of her bedroom visitors and drew a sketch, only to discover that other people had reported the same experience and had drawn the same sketch.
When I saw a drawing that a woman in North or South Carolina had made that was so much like mine that when I first saw it, I thought it was mine, I felt sick to the pit of my stomach.
Why would people in Kansas and people on the island of New Guinea have similar experiences, explain them in different languages, but have the details come out almost identical? It doesn't make sense.
What does that lead you to believe? I mean, now that you've had this experience, and now that you know that so many other people have had this experience, what do you think about it? What do you think it is?
I honestly can't say. Well, I don't know what it is, but I can say one thing: something is going on. I don't know whether it's psychic, or it's interdimensional, or it's extraterrestrial, or it's something here that we don't know about. I'm smart enough to know that there's a lot of things in this world that we'll never understand. We just can't.
Kathie Davis has had 6 or 7 encounters in all, and she believes that there are more to come. But she's not afraid any longer because she's learned to cope with the strangeness that has invaded her life, and she's hoping that she can help others cope as well.
And I'm a different person. It's opened up something in my mind, some kind of an awareness of myself and of life around me that I never had before. If it could help them to see someone else had the guts to say, hey, I don't care what you think about me. I'm telling you the facts, whether you liked them or not. You make your own judgments as to what you think it was.
You know you're not nuts.
I know I'm not nuts.
Debbie's actually a very fine artist and did a drawing of the person that she had met, the alien that she had met. And then on the front of a magazine you saw the other drawing. And you went upstairs, and what did you do?
Threw up.
Because you thought someone had stolen your drawing.
At first I was angry. I thought, how dare them print my drawing without asking me? I hadn't given it to anyone except Bud. And even got kind of mad at him because I figured he must have given it to somebody. But then my dad pointed out to me the signature at the bottom of the drawing, and it wasn't mine. And I didn't know this woman, and it really scared me.
Now, for those of you who are saying, oh, well, look, Dean, you know, that's just like in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That's where they all got that picture from. Not so fast. They did get it from that movie, but they used your research to make the movie.
Well, research of other people, too. At the time, there was quite a collection of drawings very similar to these that date from actually back into the late 60s and early 70s that Dr. Alan Hynek handed to Spielberg to use for his special effects. So those figures in that movie were based on accurate UFO research.
I've had many experiences with some life form other than human in my life since I was 5, all the way up until just recently, within a month ago. I most of the time, these beings that I have seen, had the experiences with, are about 4 feet tall, 4.5 feet tall, kind of grayish looking, large heads, really black eyes that kind of look through you rather than just looking at you. I'm pretty sure that it was I'm pretty sure it was September 23rd, 1993. I was watching TV, and a bright flashing light caught my eye out the front door. We all ran out to look at it, and it was tremendous white light with multitudes of sparkling color in it. And it got very bright and large, and then it got very small and tiny to a pinpoint, and then it kept doing that, getting bigger and littler as it was moving down to the tree line and back and forth across the trees. And at that same time, while we were out in the road, we saw something walking towards us in the road. And we also heard a beeping sound. We have about maybe 10 to 15 minutes of missing time that night. And I had a tumor that had been photographed on an ultrasound machine in my uterus. And then we had this experience, and then when I had the surgery to remove the tumor and have the hysterectomy, the tumor was gone. I had bleeding in the uterine wall, but the tumor was gone. So I tend to feel that something happened that night to remove that tumor. Perhaps it wasn't a tumor. Maybe it was a fetus. I don't know. I had a missing pregnancy that has left a lot of unanswered questions in my life. I've had some memories of that pregnancy. That child was a girl. I remembered seeing her later in life, as an older child, one time, and she was accompanied by those gray beings. I'm not really sure why they've been having contact with me. I don't know why they've been abducting me, other than perhaps because they took my mother at some point before I was born, and they're following genetic lines